Hey there, Heather Gray here, aka the Lyme Boss. I'm a functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner and a certified bioenergetic practitioner. I know, it's a mouthful. I like working with fast-paced professionals who have mysterious digestive issues, right? That you feel like Violet off of Willy Wonka in the chocolate factory after you eat something because you bloat so bad and you feel like an Oompa Loompa is going to come out of the wall and roll you away, right? Or maybe you've got brain fog where you walk into a room and you don't remember why you're there and you find your keys in the refrigerator. Or maybe you've got exhaustion, fatigue. There's not even a word in the English language to describe the level of fatigue you're experiencing. None of these are normal. None of these are all issues of something bigger. Could it be undiagnosed Lyme disease and mold toxicity? I know it was with myself. And even though the name of this podcast and my business name is The Lyme Boss, this isn't just for people with Lyme disease. This is for anybody who's been diagnosed with anything. Fill in the blank: diabetes, overweight, Hashimoto's, cancer. Because when you get to the root cause of these issues, it doesn't matter what the diagnosis is. These root cause factors can be helped with every single one of the guests that I have on my show. You could learn something from every single one of these guests on my show. And today's guest is no different. But before we get into that, a quick disclaimer, right? Like, I am not a licensed doctor. Do not take advice from this show without talking to somebody licensed, experienced first. You cannot hold us liable, as these are the opinions expressed on this show, not necessarily based in health facts. So just make sure that if you do hear something, you want to follow through with it, that you're, covering your butt and talking to your provider, and you can't come back and sue me and say I heard it on your show, because I'm going to say, nope, there's a disclaimer. So now we can move forward now that legal mumbo jumbo is over. So on to our guest. Today we've got Jodi Cohen. Yay, welcome, Jodi.
Yay, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So it's funny, her and I have known each other for a couple of years through Mindshare. And I have to start off with this funny story, because I actually haven't had your oils before, but we were sitting outside eating, and I typically order sometimes just guac for my own meal, because there's usually nothing else on the menu that I can eat. And you came to the table late, and you're watching me double dip in this guac, and you're probably thinking, oh my gosh, this girl's manners are horrendous. And then you started to share with the guac because you thought it was the table guac, which typically that it is. And it was funny, you felt so horrible. and you gave me a bottle of your Lymph oil, and I'm so grateful for that mistake and you feeling guilty, because this is actually my new favorite is like product right now. So I'm glad I got to try it. I'm glad. And normally I would always share my guac with you, Jodi. It was just happened to be the only thing I could eat that day.
Oh, no, I'm so sorry. I love guac too. I hope I bought another guac as well.
It was hilarious. But no, Jodi, like I said, the first time I met you, I wanted to learn more about oils. And so let's hear a little bit more about, like, what was your background? You said that you've got a background in nutritional therapy, but you're an award-winning journalist, which I think is freaking amazing. But, usually there's some sort of a story that gets us into the oils, right? Because that's not just something that everybody gets into. So tell us a little bit about your background.
Yeah, necessity is the mother of invention. So right out of college, I worked in the U.S. Senate for Ted Kennedy. And this was back in 1991, before the internet. And I was working the Health and Human Resources Committee on hearings. And so my job was, they would throw me, like, literally, it was almost like I was a lawyer, like these huge stacks of like research documents, and I was in charge of the senator's talking points. So I would go through all of them and prep for the hearing. So I got incredibly good, baptism by fire at figuring out research and kind of making sense and connecting dots really early on. And then I realized politics was more about making the other guy look bad than helping people. So I kind of went into journalism because that interested me. And it was the early 90s, and, they gave you a lot of leeway. And I kept breaking stories and winning awards, and that was fabulous. And then at a certain point, I realized I'm never going to make very much money doing this. So I went and got an MBA and was doing kind of marketing for Microsoft, and had child number one, who was easy, kept working for Microsoft, thought I was a good mom, had child number two, not easy. When we first had our house parent proof, they were like, some people lock the oven because some kids crawl in the oven. We're like, what kid crawls in the oven? Oh, number two. He was fun. He was really fun. And I was reading every parenting book and thinking, like, why can't I figure this kid out? One of them cutest, like, look at, touch our nose and say, look at my nose. He couldn't look at our nose. Finally, I was at a birthday party one day, and one of my good friends noticed that he was well behaved. Max is having a really good day. I'm like, yes, he is. And then another mom passed out like Ritz crackers as a snack. Max Jekyll-Hyde and took off. And once I got him, my friend was like, okay, that was interesting. I've never noticed his personality change after he ate something. My brother was on Ritalin his whole life, and it turned out he was just allergic to weird foods. You should take him to a nutritionist. And I thought, God, I can do that. I've done everything else. The nutritionist basically eliminated for Max, it was corn, soy, and dairy. And the next day he could look at our nose. And I thought, this is mind blowing. Like, I have been pounding my head against the wall, spending thousands of dollars on like parenting classes, things like uh-oh songs, and it's food. And I have to learn more. Like, I cannot believe this is so interesting. So I went back and got a degree in nutritional therapy. I live in Seattle, which is kind of like natural health wonderland, and there are all these best years there. So I took this muscle testing class to really try to help younger squirmy kids. And then my bottom fell out. My husband, who was diagnosed bipolar after my daughter was born, got really depressed after my son was born. And it got to the point where I really thought he might die on my watch. And someone suggested we move him to a residential treatment facility, which was a new vocabulary word for me at the time. But once, I kind of knew he was safe, and it wasn't my job to keep him safe. It was literally like I had crossed the finish line for a 12-year marathon. And I could barely function. I had my Microsoft job. I was class parent. I was a single parent all of a sudden. And I would get up with them. They were 5 and 7. I'd make their lunch, make them breakfast, drive them up the hill to school, turn around, come back down, crawl into bed, and set the alarm for pickup. And that was about all I could manage, as you can imagine, like, laundry was piling up. The house wasn't very clean. I wasn't making the most amazing dinners. And I just kept thinking, well, I know this is my adrenal glands. Like, I know what to do, but none of the remedies I was ingesting were really helping. And fortunately, I had a really good friend who I had helped with a big event. And as a thank you gift, she was planning to get me essential oils anyway, because as she later said, she wanted me to figure it out for her. But when she dropped it off, she said, it's interesting. I bet because you're so high stress, you've been so high cortisol, that you are so inflamed in your gut that no matter what remedy you're ingesting, it's not getting digested, absorbed, or assimilated. Oils are interesting in that you can smell them. The nasal passageway is thinner there. It goes directly into the brain through the blood-brain barrier, or you can topically apply them and they get in through the skin. Like, play with these, they might help. And, I was so game for anything. I'm like, why not? So I applied my muscle testing skills to this box of oils. Will anything help my adrenals? And I kept getting the same 5 oils, which really stumped me because I was pretty used to narrowing things down to like 1 or 2. And then it occurred to me like, oh, wait a minute, they're liquid. I can combine them like a drink. And being new to oils, I literally went into my kitchen, grabbed a shot glass and started testing, the different oils and made my first blend. And I knew enough about remedies to think, oh, adrenal glands, they're the most accessible on the low back. Put them on my low back and suddenly was like, oh my gosh, I could go running. And up until that point, like literally climbing up to my second story of my house where the bedrooms were felt overwhelming. So I'm like, all right, I'm going running. Then I came home and I'm like, I can clean the house. I can like wash my hair. I can go to the supermarket. I can make a fabulous dinner. I can do all the laundry and put it away. Like, one of those like win-win-win days that I really hadn't had in like a month. And I thought, well, this worked, like keeping this. And then that night, I would get the kids in bed and then start kind of the clock watching, oh, it's 9 o'clock. Oh, it's 9:15, and basically I would pray for sleep the whole night. And somewhere around 10:30, I was like, I had heard, I knew that when you're kind of struggling with it, sleep and insomnia, it's the pineal gland that releases melatonin. And I kind of had heard that there were some application spots around the head that were really good for that. So I figured, why not make something for sleep? I literally went downstairs, wrote down what I was making, put it on. And the next thing I remember was my 5-year-old like jumping on the bed in the morning. And I'm like, okay, that worked. I'm keeping that. So I just kind of making things up. And then at a certain point, my friends were like, what are you doing? Can we try it? I'm like, sure. And then there was a nutritional therapy conference that was going to be, I think, $200 to be a vendor. And that was actually my background, was like product research and launch, and my friends were like, you're good at this. Why don't you do something with this? So I finally went online because I'm like, someone must be doing this. And I was really surprised by two things. First of all, that no one was really doing blends to address organ systems and regions of the brain. And second of all, they made it seem so incredibly complicated. I was almost grateful that I just could not think the way I was used to, or I would have felt completely unqualified and never did it. So we went to this event we made like 100 test kits because we thought there would be like 300 people there. And we sold out in the first hour because everyone said, we love the idea of oils, but they're so confusing. We didn't really know what to do and we were afraid of doing it wrong. We love that you've organized it for us. You've taken the guesswork out. You've really kind of put it into formulas like lymph, parasympathetic, fascia, that we know, we need that. And you told us how to use it. So now it allows us to integrate this into our practice with supplements and things, and we can really help people and address kind of the bottlenecks.
Holy shnikes, what a story, my dear. My gosh, this is amazing. So this is a great little spot to pause for commercial. Don't go anywhere. We're going to be right back. Hey there. I used to not be able to drink coffee. I always reacted to it horribly. It hurt my stomach. It made me over jittery and would inflame me and cause histamine issues. But not anymore. Now that since I started drinking Danger Coffee by Dave Asprey, it's his next level of coffees. He came out with Bulletproof, and now this is the next level up. So it is mold-free, toxin-free, and he infuses it with minerals and electrolytes. So unlike other coffees, they can actually pull minerals and electrolytes from your system because it's too acidic. It actually helps replenish those. And so I don't react to it at all. I get to have my Bulletproof coffee with my MCC oil and my grass-fed butter, and I don't get the jitters, I don't get the crashes, and I love how focused and energized it makes me feel. Again, non-toxic, mold-free, infused with minerals and electrolytes. I absolutely love Danger Coffee. Make sure to check out my website, thelymeboss.com. Go to the resource section and get yours. Holy cow, Jodi, what a story. That's absolutely amazing. And what beautiful angels you've had in your life, right? The first one who pointed out, hey, your son's behavior is really different after he eats. And then the second one was like, hey, try these oils. Like,
I know.
awesome.
I'm still friends with both of them. Yeah.
They're incredible. That's incredible. So let's dive deeper into your oil line and what makes it different compared to some of the oil lines that are out there, and what are some of your favorite blends, and what let's dig deeper into the lymph today, because my folks are a lot of Lyme and mold, and detox issues are definitely high on that list. So let's dive deeper into that little bad boy.
Yeah. So, I mean, the most interesting thing to me, like before I kind of had my like rock bottom moment, I knew I was stressed. Like I'd go to my naturopathic practitioner and they would say like, your adrenals are really tired. And they'd say, you really have to reduce stress. And it used to almost, make me stressed to think like, okay, yes, I can totally go to my yoga class or, to a spa or whatever. And then I'm going to come home and the house still needs to be clean. The laundry still needs to be done. I'm not getting rid of my children or my job, or at that point, my husband. Like, what am I going to do with this? But I did know, there's that idea that, it's how you respond to stress, not the stress. Like, for example, most of us have had the experience where we're driving in our car and someone cuts us off. And some days we're like, oh, well, like maybe they're in a hurry. I hope they get there safely. Like, you're fine. It doesn't bother you at all. The next day, the exact same situation could happen and four-letter words are flying out of your mouth involuntarily. And the only variable in that moment is you and your capacity for resilience. And I realized, like, wait a minute, like, okay, I'm not getting rid of my life, but maybe I can enhance my capacity so that when those, roller coaster moments come, I don't need to get on the roller coaster. I can kind of stay more resilient. And I knew that it was your parasympathetic nervous system. So for listeners that aren't super familiar with the autonomic nervous system, it controls your automatic functions, your heart rate, your digestion, your ability to detoxify, your immune function, your ability to anti-inflame. And it really is designed to keep you alive. So if danger is present, if there happens to be a lion prowling your neighborhood, or if you turn on the TV and see something, scary in the news, you see maybe there's a school shooting or something that upsets you, and you have this anticipatory stress because the brain does not really differentiate between the lion chasing you down the street and the possibility that a shooter could show up, in your neighborhood, you allocate resources towards survival. So your blood is routed to your arms and your legs so that you can either fight back or flee. That's your fight or flight sympathetic nervous system. And then ideally, there's kind of a great free guide, Zebras Don't Get Ulcers. It basically talks about how the lion chases the zebra outruns it, it's safe, it kind of shakes. You might see your dog shake, it barks at another dog, and then it shakes. What it's doing is recalibrating.
Hold on really quick. I actually had this conversation with somebody earlier today, and she was like, I was so stressed out, I was shaking. And I'm like, did you stop yourself? And she said, yeah. And people a lot of times think that that's like a bad thing, like a sign of extreme stress. But it's like, no. That's actually a sign that your body is doing the appropriate response to stress. So no, let your hand shake, maybe actually help it and shake it out a little bit more, right?
Yes. It's a natural gear shift. And that's what, your parasympathetic nervous system is your rest, digest, repair. You're supposed to kind of outrun the danger and then shake, recalibrate, shift gears into parasympathetic and heal. Blood flows routed back towards digestion, detoxification, all the healing modalities. This gear shift is your vagus nerve, cranial nerve number 10. Most people have never heard of it. It literally is the gut-brain axis. It starts kind of at the base of the head, behind the neck, splits, winds around both sides, and is most accessible right behind your earlobe. If you feel behind your earlobe, you're going to feel a bone. That is your mastoid bone. That is kind of the magic space. That is where it is most accessible to the surface. And then it winds through kind of your throat, your heart, your lungs, every organ of digestion and detoxification. One of my early mentors, Jodi Karazian, was very excited about the vagus nerve, and his way of, this is interesting, it's kind of counterintuitive. You think calm, you calm it. No, you stimulate it. It is literally shifting gears. And you can do that by gagging yourself with a tongue depressor, gargling, scaring yourself, splashing your face with freezing water, all things that Dr. Karazian recommended. And shockingly, in practice, very little compliance. You're having a panic attack. Oh, just gag yourself. People are like, I am so not doing that. Even things like, box breathing, which should be relaxing, feels too much in the moment. So it's a little bit like your supplement graveyard. If you're not taking the supplements, you're not going to get help. If the ambulance can't get to the accident because it's stuck in traffic, not going to save any lives. I wanted to make something as easy as possible. So oils can be stimulatory. We know this. There are oils like oregano, thyme, peppermint, even cinnamon, clove, that if you put it on your skin, gosh, it looks red or it feels hot. If this happens, you're not going to put water on it because water and oil don't mix. You're going to take any oil in your kitchen, coconut oil, olive oil, doesn't matter, and just dilute it. But I figured I would take advantage of that stimulatory capacity. So I used clove. Clove is super stimulatory, very high in a constituent eugenol that is very healing, and it has medium-sized molecules. So if you were to put just clove on your vagus nerve, it would take like 10 or 15 minutes to get active. If you combine it with a citrus oil like lime, which has super small molecules, this is why everyone says, oh, lemon, neroli, bergamot, all of the citrus oils kind of are so uplifting because they're so small moleculed. Then suddenly it's this like very potent stimulatory oil that gets in really quickly and acts almost like an acupuncture needle. Smells really good. If you're Jewish, it smells a bit like a Havdalah box, and it can kind of, you can have that Pavlovian effect where, the domino cascade is you're stimulating your vagus nerve with this really gentle, easy, non-invasive tool. It turns on your parasympathetic nervous system. Blood flow is now routed back to all healing, including to your forehead, your executive function area of your prefrontal cortex. So if you, like me, have those anxiety, panic moments where suddenly like your heart's exploding out of your chest and you're like, maybe there could be a killer, maybe something terrible is going to happen. And, then you start to think clearly and you're like, okay, maybe, but probably not. It's probably safe to walk my dogs in my suburban neighborhood. You can just start to think rationally and clearly.
That's absolutely incredible. So what is it about the lymph? Oh, so you did tell us a little bit. And so that's what the ingredients was in it. What's another one of your favorite go-tos? And touch a little bit on how you're different compared to some of the oils out there.
Yeah, I mean, what I do, I'll show you my three favorites. They're parasympathetic, lymph, and fascia release. And we could kind of talk about opening the neck and drainage in the neck. What I do differently is I really try to take the guesswork out of oils. When I started delving into research, I realized that, like lavender, for example, everyone thinks of lavender as great for sleep, and it is, but it's never just lavender in isolation. Whenever you look at the research, it's lavender in combination with other oils. I really think like most recipes, it's not just like, here's your apple, it's like, here's your apple with the walnuts, with the lettuce. It's usually a combination of flavors because that really brings out and enhances everything. Or if you go to like a musical performance, it's not, you might just go to a violin solo, but it's often the whole symphony. And there's something about the nuances of the different plants and the different remedies that really combine to accentuate healing. And for all chronic illness, including Lyme, and autoimmunity, so much of what we're trying to do is make sure that the good things get in and the bad things leave the body, right? And so what gets in that way? It's, the body is a hydraulic system. It's draining downstream, right? So think of traffic, in Seattle, if you're trying to drive to Portland, there are two big cities. There's Tacoma and there's Olympia. Always traffic. And that means not only is there traffic in those cities, but the traffic backs up for a good 20 minutes in advance. Guess why? There's congestion at that spot, hydraulic system. And so there's a backup upstream. So what goes on if there is, the toxins are supposed to go from the cells to the fascia, to the lymph, to the blood, to the liver, to the gallbladder, to the gut, to the toilet. At any point, they can back up. And for example, the neck, I'm super obsessed with the vagus nerve, most accessible right here. A lot of my friends, including Dr. Christine Schaffner, were finding this idea of vagus nerve toxicity. Tufts neuroscientist who figured out that there is vagus nerve toxicity, which means, if you think about where is this vagus nerve point and what else is going on there? Well, your trigeminal nerve from your mouth, where there might be amalgams or cavitations or other things, is also draining and intersects there. So let's pretend there are mercury amalgams, toxins are trying to drain. There's congestion here because maybe the lymph is inflamed or the fascia is constricted. We brace for impact, and then safety comes and we forget to get out of our tech neck and open up. And all of a sudden it sits too long and it's uptaken by the nerve and maybe transfers into the brain, and it impedes the downstream signaling. So that can be going on. There can also be lymph congestion. If you've ever sat in the middle row of an airline, that's happened to me. Say there are two linebackers. I literally couldn't even turn the pages of my book because there's no room. So if the lymph is congested and kind of pressing on the vagus nerve, that can be a problem. There was an interesting researcher, Marco Ruggiero, started using sonograms to kind of take pictures of the neck and see that inflamed, congested lymph and how it presses into the vagus nerve. And he found that topically applied remedies like essential oils can kind of anti-inflame the lymph. So suddenly there's more space so the vagus nerve can function. So what I'm really trying to do is teach people, the neck is the bottleneck to the brain. If the neck is congested, the good things like the nutrients and the oxygen can't really get in. And the toxins, metabolic waste, you mentioned mold, which can get into the brain, parasites, viruses, all of these things can really impede the drainage in the brain. And then what happens, those toxins are in the brain, they turn on the immune system, they cause brain inflammation, you feel tired, forgetful, all of these things. So how do you open up the neck? It's a very systematic process. Sequence matters, right? So step one, all of your lymph drains through your clavicles. If you're feeling your clavicles around your collarbone and they feel a little tender, that's a great place to just open up. And it can be as simple as just gently kind of brushing on it. You can pat on it. If you want to get really specific, like do little gentle brush strokes for the count of 10. You can complement it by applying an oil. We have a great lymph one that you mentioned. This is step one. Like, let's just make sure, we're not going to yell fire in the crowded movie theater without opening the exit doors. These are the exit doors. Lymph 75%.
You've got some of the greatest analogies. I love it.
Oh, well, thank you. I mean, that combination journalism, combination being a mom.
I love it.
Yeah. Thank you. Well, no, let's open the lymph first. And if you get nothing else out of this interview, keep that. And then step 2 is really opening the vagus nerve. So using the parasympathetic on the vagus nerve. And then we can drain, along the jaw, down the neck. The majority of the lymph nodes do live in the neck, for good reason, so that we make sure the brain is clean. It's a little bit like an aquarium, right? If the water gets dirty, the fish get sick. What keeps the water clean? What is the filter system of your body? It's your lymph. So let's make sure that the environment in the brain is as clean as possible. So we're going to open the clavicle, step 1, stimulate the vagus nerve, step 2, open the neck and the jaw, step 3. And then the other thing that can happen a lot is the fascia. The fascia kind of is the web that surrounds the lymph, and it can get a little congested. So for anyone who maybe does yoga and has a hard time doing heart opening, that's the fascia in the back. If you have a hard time doing any kind of pigeon or hip opening, that's the fascia at the hip. So this was actually the reason I put everything in roller bottles, because I started realizing it's so much easier. Like literally in yoga, I'm like, ooh, my back hurts. I'm rolling it on myself. And it's life altering. It's like seconds. It suddenly opens it up. So you asked about my 3 favorite oils. They're part of our vagus nerve kit. It is the lymph that you love, the parasympathetic, and the fascia. And I literally carry them with me everywhere. And then if you want to get a little bit more advanced, I have a heart one and a circulation one that I also love. But that's pretty much been kind of my daily go-to protocol. Like, don't leave home without them.
Absolutely. That's going to be my new emergency kit, I think, for all my Lyme and mold clients who come on board, because, detox is such a huge key. And a lot of them now, they've got mast cell stuff. And so they're super sensitive to anything, and it's really hard to move the needle. Plus, like I said, getting them out of fight or flight. I do teach a lot of somatic experiencing work, Dr. Amy Apigian, and, breath work. But a lot of times that's people they're just not willing to do it at first. And I think a lot of times it's because they're still so wound up. So the ease of this, not to mention it smells amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. And everything you're teaching is great layers. It's kind of like crawl before you walk before you run. I trained for the New York City Marathon. You don't do 18 miles out of the gate. You work up to it. So this is like good baby steps.
I love it. Another awesome analogy.
Yeah.
You're amazing. Awesome. Oh my gosh. Everybody, let's thank Jodi for joining us today. Thank you. That was just amazing. Like I said, I knew that I needed to know more about your oils, and the only way to do it was to have you on the show. So I'm so glad you came. Everybody, make sure I will put a link in the show notes where you can go to Jodi's site and get your own oils. And also make sure to check out thelymeBoss.com and get your free cooking series, because that's another way to lower inflammation, right? Is by cooking real healthy food. And I'd like to show you how to do that in 20 minutes or less. So anything you want to leave us with, Miss Jodi?
The only thing that was really empowering for me, kind of getting back to this idea that you can't control your environment, but I went through some other bumps in the road, and when hard things happen, I like to know someone else could survive it, because then it's like, if someone else can do it, then I can do it, right? So I was like looking for the biggest survivor I could find, and I found Holocaust survivor Viktor Frankl and reread Man's Search for Meaning. And this one quote really stood out to me. Between the stimulus and the response, there is a space. And in that space lies our power to choose our response. And in our response lies our growth and our freedom. And what that meant to me, and especially kind of, I suffer from autoimmunity. It's so hard when, when things aren't easy, and it can be really frustrating. Just to know that when I would feel like kind of anxious or overwhelmed, honestly, stimulating my vagus nerve and kind of activating my parasympathetic nervous system, it made everything better. It kind of gave me that space to be like, okay, this is a moment, and I have options. And just, the opposite of I don't feel safe is I have choices. And so it always kind of allowed me to have that space to see options. And that made a big difference in my mindset in healing. And I think that's really important.
Absolutely, 110% agreed. Again, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and your story and getting vulnerable with us. Like, I really appreciate it, and I know lots of people here are gonna find lots of amazing information off this episode. So great job, thank you again.
Thank
Everybody
you.
else, make sure to have a healthy day. Make sure to like, subscribe, and share this episode, even if you found one little piece of inspiring nugget in it. This is how we change people's lives. This is how people get better. This is how people get hope. So please make sure that you are liking, sharing, and subscribing. Stay tuned for the next episode. You're not going to want to miss it. And while you're at it, head to my website, thelymeboss.com, and make sure you download your free video series, Real Cooking for Real Life. Learn amazing, delicious meals in 20 minutes or less. Learn why and how we cook certain things that are toxin-free, free of contaminants, and how to get a delicious, healthy meal under 20 minutes. You're not going to want to miss out. That's thelymeboss.com.